0 to 100 is a podcast dedicated to bringing you quality conversations and insights on resiliency in physical, mental, social, and spiritual fitness through engaging discussions with those in the military and beyond. Have you ever thought of being on an all-marine sports team? Now is a great time to check it out. Semperfit is now seeking applications for men's softball, men's and women's golf, men's and women's sevens rugby, and men's basketball. Application deadlines for several sports begin as early as May. Check out the description below for additional information and a link to the Mar Edmonds.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast, 0 to 100. Mark is joining me as my co-host, and we are interviewing Staff Sergeant Stefanowicz, who is an Olympian. He's he has served on the all Marine wrestling team, and now has wrestled in the Olympics. And so we are having a great conversation. If you didn't listen to segment 1, go back and hear it, and because now we're in segment 2. And as we begin segment 2, Johnny, I just want to ask you this question. So based in segment 1, you really talked about how, you realized that the university system was not for you. You joined the Marine Corps, but then as you did, you just never got the orders that you wanted, right? So I want to go here, but didn't get that. And I want to go here, didn't get that. And just all these events of not getting what you wanted. But now suddenly things are happening and you're now getting asked to go places and do things. So my question for you is, do you have a personal philosophy that you look back on how things unfolded? As you look back at that, what's your belief system about that? About, why maybe it was a good thing you didn't get what you wanted, or do you kind of regret not getting what you wanted? So if you could start with that, I think it's a great way to begin this second segment.
Oh yeah. Well, thanks, Stephen. I definitely at the time, it's one of those things where when you look back is when you gain your wisdom, and that truly starts to resonate with me now with children, and then seeing them do things that I tell them not to do. But for me, if I found a great goodness in not being able to go where I thought I wanted to go. I wanted to go to Pensacola. I wanted to follow my cousin's footsteps. I wanted to continue on this path. But what I realized is all of those things were happening for a reason, but they were unbeknownst to me. I decided that I thought, maybe I might get out of the Marine Corps. Maybe I won't have this, or maybe this isn't for me. What I realized is everywhere that I went, and it wasn't what I had planned on or what I thought I had wanted, it was where I was being taken. Now, whether that was there by the Marine Corps' goodness of just telling me you're not getting what you want, or if it was God's hand, which I truly believe it was. What I know is that nothing happens this often on coincidence after coincidence after coincidence. And so I've truly gained the knowledge to me. And I believe that there is a silver lining in almost everything that occurs. But for me, there was a huge learning curve after I left Okinawa, and it kind of solved a lot of mysteries and puzzles for me, which was, no matter where you're planted, find a way to prosper. It doesn't matter what it is, but if you don't, then you're just going to either become a liability, or you're going to become depressed, or whatever it is, you won't be productive. And, a huge thing of mine that I've preached to all of my Marines, few and far between, was, make yourself an asset, not a liability. But in order to do that, you need to prosper no matter where you're at. So if you want to, again, if you don't want to accept me in your university, or you don't want to accept me over here, then I'm going to prove you wrong and have a chip on my shoulder, but I'm going to prove you wrong no matter what. And that always comes with, a good support system. Like I said before about, I had these immediate leaders that believed in me enough to go to bat for me, to the senior leadership in the command that said, I don't want to lose that Marine because we need a body. They saw something greater, and they had this fire in them to be able to fight for me no matter what. And so that, that was something I was truly thankful for, but it made me realize that if I had gone to Pensacola, then I wouldn't have, created the friends and the relationships and the opportunities that I had in 29. If I, went to Cherry Point, then I wouldn't have been able to come back and stay at Lejeune and say, hey, I want to try and go to the All Marine Wrestling team, and then after 6 months, can I get this extension or permanent orders or whatever it may be? Because it would have been a simple, local TAD. You don't even get per diem because it's so close. It's like 48 miles gate to gate. So they don't even count it as anything. It's a PCA, actually. It's not even a PCS. So I wouldn't have done my Okinawa tour. I wouldn't have done an overseas tour. And those little things it's a domino effect, really, butterfly effect, that where if I hadn't done those pieces, I probably, without a doubt, would not have been where I'm at today, because I wouldn't have had the opportunities. I've PCA'd like 4 times on Camp Lejeune. Now, granted, that was going back and forth between the team, going to the intelligence community, going to work up at NGA in Alexandria in Fort Belvoir, but those were all TAD things where it brought me back, and I'm finally able to go and PCS and move to somewhere else now. But I wouldn't be where I'm at today if it weren't for things that I thought that I wanted not happening, because I didn't know where my life was truly able to take me. I was confined in my own belief, where truly, like, if it's God's plan, if that's your belief, or if it's, a greater, higher power out there. For me, I'm a Christian. I'm not denominational. I won't stop and go to one church over another. I go to where I believe in the pastor, the priest, or this and that. It's, hey, I'm here. If you want to try and shoot some wisdom and knowledge on me, I'm going to take it and run with it, but I'm not going to judge you for anything else. And so that definitely keeps me pretty open when I look at everything else. But, and throughout the Marine Corps, I think that's helped me a little bit too. And especially even during COVID, I had to find a church that was just open. So, it definitely plays a factor to everything, and not, keeping your eyes open, seeing the world with a bigger set of eyes, as I say now. And for me, I was confined in this mindset that this is what I'm capable of, so this is what I want. When there was something out there that said, you're better than what you believe in. So, the self-doubt has to leave you, and you have to go somewhere else. And it led me to where I'm at today.
Yeah, so Johnny, thank you for that response. I have a question that kind of going back to the chip on your shoulder, and you develop this kind of passion to prove others wrong, and the leadership became a real catalyst to you pursuing greater things. But going back to your earliest, maybe part of life, maybe your childhood, right? What do you think your parents instilled in you, or your environment, just whether it's parents, friends, or your community? What do you think was foundational that had continued to influence the way you have dealt with life, Marine Corps, and beyond? I ask this because I'm sure you've met many Marines that didn't have some of those tools, or maybe didn't have a framework that allow them to, what you said, which is, bloom where you're planted. Like, they didn't have those either beliefs or the framework, and sometimes they end up collapsing, right, under pressure. So looking back, now that you're older, as a dad, more perspective, as you said, bigger eyes, right? Like, what do you see? How did you get that? What were your foundational sort of influences?
Man, I'd say in the last, even though I've grown in age and stature and the Marine Corps and this and that, I was definitely one of those things where I was a social butterfly, and a lot of things that I was definitely angry at all those, if I didn't go here, then I wanted something else, and I wanted there. I kept bouncing back and forth like a pinball between places to go or things that I wanted to do. And, I kind of had trouble deciding on that. What kept me strong and to continue succeeding was probably my upbringing. I was raised on a farm, in Pennsylvania, and, I pulled crops all day long. And probably another reason why my grades weren't so great, but that's neither here nor there. And growing up there, I just kept, you kind of grow a thickness in your skin to where you understand that hard work, even if you don't realize that hard work will pay off. It's not one of those things where you ask for something, but you continue to work for something until it's more than earned, but until it's so foreseen that it has to be bestowed upon you, in a sense, right? I grew up in a household where everything was yes, sir, yes, ma'am. And manners came before anything else. Manners came before food. Manners came before grades. Manners came before going anywhere or sports. And it was just a custom and courtesy, rightfully so. And I might not be as harsh as my parents were to my kids, but we're getting there. But it was something about it at the time. I didn't understand what they were doing, but they set this foundational thing that when you say something like that and you mean it and you truly set a goal, that you just see it through, right? You follow it through. And working on a farm at a young age like that, it was one of those things where the family, even though I might have been 12 or 13, and yeah, my dad could have done it, but if he tasked me with it, then my job was to get that done. And I wasn't doing anything else until that was complete. So luckily I had that upbringing. So I had that natural innate ability, that, innate mentality where even if I didn't like what I was doing, I was going to do it here. I was told to do it now. That was either my orders that was given, or I told myself, hey, I'm going to go do this over here. So I just naturally pulled myself into that mindset and mentality of let's finish this. Let's finish this. Let's finish this. I mean, later years, I can thank my wife for actually setting me down and grounding me, which I'm more than thankful for.
That's great. I'm not surprised that you have that kind of background. I have a theory that people who have wrestled or worked early on like that, on a farm or with their hands, they generally have a higher percentage of doing well in the military. As a chaplain, I tend to kind of keep sort of a mental log, right? Patterns that I see. And there's something about, and then I'm sure wrestling as well as the Marine Corps translates well into that mindset for you, right? They're very compatible. It's nonstop grinding. It's all about work ethic. And it's kind of embracing the pain and the struggle for progress and growth, right?
Yeah, I mean, embracing the suck was probably the best thing that I heard as a young Marine, and I realized that that's all I was already doing. It wasn't something I had to embrace. That was just called a work day. Now you're telling me
that's your love language.
Like, yeah, now you're telling me it's an excuse that I can use. So that, and I see that a lot, but that's something that there are a lot of people out there that have struggled with that, because the adversity is something that I hadn't faced before. But for me, I had a compounding effect of that, to where you do grow that, like I said, that thick skin. It wasn't just like calluses on my hand, but just the fact that, we sold, for instance, like we sold sweet corn during the summertime. So my summer vacation, I was pulling, 20 dozen ears of corn in a wheelbarrow to bring it back from the field to the stand, because the money and tips that we got was what I was going to use to save up for like the Cutters football gloves for summer training in the fall or whatever for football. Like I had, if I didn't get those ears of corn, I couldn't get the tips. If I didn't get the tips, I couldn't get the gloves. If I couldn't get the gloves, then I believed I probably couldn't catch a football, and I couldn't play football then. Right. And there was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I remember plenty of times where I didn't do it, and my parents were like, that's too bad. Like, such to suck, I guess. Right.
Yeah.
That's good.
And you have to figure it out. It was having that where I wasn't giving. It's very difficult, because you always want better for your children than what you had. But as adults, we also have to remember that in order for our children to succeed, they need to be able to fail, at least with us as having oversight.
Right.
And what you realize, what parents probably had difficulty with, was the fact that you have to see them suffer like that, but it's going to help them in the long run. But you don't like to see your children suffer. So that was definitely something growing up. When you say, what was it? It was that. It was my parents, creating that level of discipline and not wavering from it.
That's a delicate balance, right? Both in parenting, but also whether an Olympic coach leads a team, in what manner, right? Or a battalion sergeant major or CEO, how they lead. It's a delicate balance of, okay, I need to give them some hardships to build character, to build resilience, but I don't want to be hated so much that I make it all resentful and bitter. And,
Right.
they just kind of become, renegades. And man, what do you think is the magical balance or the art there of, yes, I will give hardship, but there's a sense of appreciation and there's a sense of, oh, okay, this is good for me.
Right. Well, for me, I mean, just getting done with my degree in this particular kind of stuff that was something that was harped on a lot. I learned a lot about Marine Corps leadership or leadership in general, just because of that. Because I mean, leadership and parenting and coaching, they may be off by a few degrees, but in all actuality, you should follow the same principles, the same set. So you have to be able to understand, one, who you are, who it is that you're actually leading or mentoring, coaching or parenting, but we just say leading, and then where you're at and where you're trying to go. And, you know, when you add those things together, you realize that you can always, you know, figure out with variables pretty quickly who it is that you're leading. You can always figure out where it is that you're trying to go and where it is that you currently are. That way you kind of set that X and Y axis. But for me, what I've seen within myself is the biggest growth, but also in leaders that I start harping on a lot and try and have those tough conversations of a subordinate, you know, to a superior, is who are you? What type of leader are you? Right. So you have that what do you want to be? I want to be an astronaut, or I want to be, you know, a dirt bike racer. I think I put in my third grade yearbook one time or something. I want to be an Olympian, right? That's what you want to be, but who you want to be is a very much difficult. It's a difficult question, and I've spent tons of time. I had my, you know, my USA Wrestling leader, my team leader, actually in a session asked me that, and he said, "John, who do you want to be? I know what you are, and you're great at that, but who do you want to be? Who do you want to be remembered? All these things." And it came down. I said, I want to be somebody that's remembered, you know, as, you know, that person that could always be looked to and gained from. And, you know, it came down to, in other words, I just want to be a better leader. I want to be a great leader. I want to be someone that can be remembered as that, you know, and sought after and sought for. So for me, there's a ton of things in there about different leadership styles, and how to take that. We look at the Marine Corps, we look at the military. You know, we're very authoritarian and in crisis, and, you know, there's a time and place for every type of leadership out there. The key and the trick to it, when you're going through these ranks and everything, or even kids and you name it, whatever it is, and they're different transitional phases, is you want to be a transformational leader, right? You need to see who it is that you have, and you have this point, because if you're not looking at this, that means that you're kosher with where you're at. And when you're kosher, that means you're stagnant. When you're stagnant, like I said, you're falling back. So you're always trying to transform. So being a transformational leader and understanding what that takes, you know, along with the 30,000 other types. All right, there's really like 12 other types of leadership styles, I guess, but there's a few of them in my book that I know stand out, you know, transformational, transactional, and authoritarian. Those are like my big three, and it just depends on the scenario, and it depends on what job you have and the scenario that you have.
Yeah, that's great. You clearly, you know, been thinking about this at length, and, you know, this segment we've dedicated to better understanding or helping our listeners get a sense of how did you deal with success, right? I'm a big fan of biographies, and when you read biographies, especially of, you know, kind of rags to riches stories, you find that people do better with adversity than success. And it stems from the issue of identity that you mentioned. That other wrestler asked you, who do you want to be? Right? Like, identity is really the overarching kind of, you know, it's a frame that we hold on to, right? That's what keeps us stable. And when our identity is shaken up, and it doesn't matter, right? The other stuff will eventually be compromised. So I'm curious, so going back to Okinawa, and you win that tournament, you are recruited, and so things are now on the up and up. You are now becoming a figure in the Marine Corps and in the wrestling scene. What is happening? So give us a summary of kind of what were next steps and how you handled the success.
Well, yeah, that's definitely something that I'm still facing today. You know, to be completely honest, there's there's no one-off solution that you're just supposed to follow. Everyone has a different path. That's kind of the beauty in it, though. It's a roller coaster ride, and for me, it's just been a Cinderella story that's now turned into like one of those Rudy movies and stories where I was absolutely what they consider nobody, with no potential. Your ceiling is X, which is very low, to being able to go through and it. Quite honestly, when I talked about my wife before, grounding me, that's when I had my success. I didn't have my success when I first got to the team. Actually, I never made a national team. Being top 3 in the country means you're a national team member. It comes with more everything else and perks and team status and whatnot. But I never reached that. I never got a gold medal at the Armed Forces Championships. I never won an international. Actually, I never won an international medal at that point, and I was on the team for a couple of years. I was decent again, and I realized that my ceiling was higher than what I believed. But then my time to reenlist came, and I reenlisted, joined the intel community, and so the Marine Corps came calling naturally because I joined another MOS. I joined another job field, so that caused me to leave the team abruptly in 2014. So when I did, I walked away with this sense of, it was a different sense of, being upset, and it wasn't resentment. It was more of, man, I just proved myself wrong from everything before. I proved a lot of people wrong as well. All American and stuff, but I walked away saying, man, if I had a little bit more time, or if I would have just capitalized on something, I could have done something different. I could have done a little bit more. And my last match on the senior circuit, for USA Wrestling was for 3rd and 4th at World Team Trials. It was in Daytona in 14, I guess. And I pulled so hard in a throw that I gave myself a hernia, and I ended up losing the match. I took 4th, and again, I was so close. I realized that I was on the cusp of making a national team for the country, for USA. I'm not talking about districts anymore or anything. I had now risen above to where I believed, and where anybody else for that matter believed I could go. But my ceiling was there, and that was where my ceiling was put at. I got the surgery, I recovered. Then I went into the intelligence community, and so on and so on for the next 3 years. And I realized that I could have done so much more if I just would have, again, stuck to what I believed in. If I was true to myself, I could have done something else. And so I walked away and told myself, if I ever get that opportunity again, if I ever get that opportunity again, I'm going to capitalize on it. That's why I ended up getting a tattoo on my arm after a motorcycle accident in that same time frame. It was a really rough year for me. That never sacrifice the thrills of living for the security of existence. And I held that true, and I hold it true today. And it's something that I preach, and every time I give a speaking session, or anytime I go to do something, is for me to hold on. What I was doing is I was just holding on to exist on the team. I was happy. I was content with where I was at. But I never sought out for that higher level, that new experience. And it cost me a national team spot. That could have pushed my orders to the right. It could have done many things for me, right? But I didn't capitalize on it. I thought this was, again, I set my own ceiling low, and I realized that I could have had so much more.
Yeah, as you tell me your story, it reminds me of before I joined the Navy, I dropped out of a doctorate program, and I felt so much shame and regret. And I used it to fuel myself so that I would never, ever feel that again. And so it is what made me finish a doctorate in 2019, because that was brutal, doing that while I was active duty with 3 kids at the time. But I'm sure it became fuel for you too. And along those lines, I'm curious. So you said your wife became this grounding force. What was different with her in your life in terms of just your work ethic, or how bad you wanted it?
what the wife did, my wife Samantha, what she did for me was, after I had went to the intelligence community, we had known each other for some time already, but we ended up marrying, I guess in 2017. But we were already living together up here. We were in Camp Lejeune. For some reason, the monitor felt some type of way about keeping me here. I had orders to Pendleton, then they got changed to Yuma, and then something about an EFMP for one of the other Marines in my class during graduating, and I got put right back in Lejeune again. That's just the way it worked. And so I was here for a couple of years. I did great things. I did real well at 2nd Intelligence Battalion, and I didn't give up on wrestling. I stayed with the team. I had connections and stuff like that, but I never made it. And something I just spoke about regularly, going places nonstop with Samantha back home, was like, if I ever got the chance to go back to the team, I wouldn't sacrifice I wouldn't give a second to go somewhere else, to do something else. Like if I go there, it's going to be a full commitment, and my life is going to be engulfed with bettering myself, both on the mat, off the mat, Marine Corps, everything else. But I kind of just had this, being upset is just being something out of your control. You can't control it. It makes you upset to the point where it makes you shake. And, for me, it was so difficult that I made it. I did everything everyone said I couldn't do. And yet I realized, damn it. A little bit more would have done something for me. And, she said, no, keep believing in it. Sooner or later, if you keep doing this, great, maybe you'll get the chance to go back. I didn't believe her, because that was nonsense. Why would I go back to the team? Nobody ever goes back to the team twice, right? Nobody ever stayed on the team for more than a couple years anyways, and I had already done that. But nobody in the Marine Corps ever gone back to an all-Marine team again. And then long behold, in December of 2016, I guess, 2017 timeframe, around the new year, I got a call from the monitor, and he said, hey, when do you want to execute orders to the all-Marine wrestling team? Hey, Mass Sergeant, I have no idea what you're talking about. Lo and behold, my command also had no idea what he was talking about, so they weren't very happy. And I think they had me slated to go on a MU like late in 2017 or something like that, and so it messed their numbers up again. So they weren't very thrilled with the news of me leaving. But I left in February of 2017. I'd gone back down the road to All-Marine Wrestling Team, and from that year of 2017 to the current day, I've made a national team every single year. I ended up finished second that year, third in 18. I made my first world team in 2019 and 20. And then in 21, this past year, obviously, I made the Olympic team. So it's been 5 years running of a national team now. I finished my degree, 2 beautiful boys. And something else was, they told me I'd never get selected for staff, and lo and behold, I feel like I'm doing pretty good with that too, right? But yeah, it was definitely a lot of power back home. That spouse support just hits different from that work support, honestly.
Yeah, no, that's great. I know, recruiting command, right? It loves to use you to speak of all the potential that young men and women can pursue in the Marine Corps. But I think they should also use you as a poster child for talent management, which is a big right topic of effort right now, because people like you, who you have unique talents, and it would be terrible to pigeonhole you, right? So that you fit a certain mold of what Marines were like in yesteryears. Because obviously you can still perform well as a Marine in your MOS, but you have these other gifts and talents. And I think our conversation, if anything, showcases how your wrestling, your athletic background and interests also enhance what you're bringing to the Marine Corps community at large, right? So it may not always be about you being another trigger puller in every fight, but there's this bigger picture of impact. So yeah, I hope people high enough in the food chain in the Marine Corps listen to this, and factor in people like in your situation, because I know talent management, that's kind of one of the the focus is, right? It's to, hey, rather than have a rigid box in which we put people into, let's groom talent and specialize our Marines in ways that they could be more effective. So,
Yeah, Mark. Yeah, I've read the talent management. I haven't gotten any calls or any emails yet, though. And I'm not willing to make the call or email going the other way. So you free to do that, but I'm not making that one.
I think they're still making the sausage, but hey, if anybody asks me anything about it, I'm sure I'll mention you as a case of, hey, look, we got Marines like that. You know, how do we best utilize them to but make it a win-win situation, right?
Right.
Well, hey, Mark and
So
Johnny,
yeah,
we are coming to the end of our second segment already. What a great conversation. I want, as we wrap up this second segment, I wanted to highlight something that, as I've been listening, this is what stuck out to me. So in the Marine Corps right now, and this is part of my job right now, actually, is I'm the resiliency person, if you will, for the human performance branch here at TCOM. And so that's been my job, is to look at what makes a person resilient and how do we help our Marines to be more resilient. And of course, one of the 4 domains of fitness that we push out there to say, hey, Marines, you need to be working on these 4 areas of fitness: your physical fitness, your mental fitness, your social fitness, and your spiritual fitness. Mark alluded to those earlier. But as I've listened to your story, I've heard you talk about those 4 areas of fitness, and I don't know if you realized it or not, but you obviously have been working on your physical fitness. We hear that all the way through. But then your mental fitness, you pursued your education. You've pursued your education both in the Marine Corps and outside of the Marine Corps, getting your bachelor's degree, but then also changing MOSs and all of those education pieces. But then your social fitness, you've made it very clear that your family is most important, and being embedded in community and being a part of a religious community as well as part of your life, and how important your wife and kids are. And that's huge, right? Having that social foundation, right? Your connectedness with your relationships and how critical that is. And I really appreciate that you've made that a priority. And then also the spiritual, right? The connection with God. And that's all part of your life. And so you really are, as Mark just mentioned, definitely one that could be used by MICRIC to say, hey, here's what it looks like you can be successful in the Marine Corps. But I would say you are also a great one that we can say, hey, here's what it looks like to be living out the 4 areas of fitness in your life and in career. So thank you so much. We're going to pause here. So listeners, but hey, we're going to come right back in segment number 3. And in segment 3, I think our theme for that is to look at a little bit more talking about how to balance everything now as we move forward. And so we're looking forward to the next part of your story. But we're going to pause here. And so please, listeners, join us in the next segment.
This concludes another episode of the 0 to 100 podcast. Thank you all for listening, and until next time, be strong, be courageous.